Hi, welcome back to another edition of Legal Quilts. Today we're going to do an update on the quilt for Ukraine. This one's the group project. I'll put in the show notes the link to the original one on how to make these, the fabric requirements and everything. Why we're doing this now is it's been 2 years since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine by Russia and 10 years since Russia grabbed the Crimea. The Ukrainian people are still fighting on, but support is waning. So I just want to keep this in people's consciousness. I know there's a lot of other things going on in the world, but I don't want this to be forgotten. This quilt, when it's done, I'm going to donate it to a local Ukrainian church so they can raffle it off for funds. Now, how are we making this? It is just basically a grandmother's flower garden with hexes. You've got the center piece, you've got the yellow flower for the sunflower, and then the blue for the Ukrainian sky. Now, when you're sewing these pieces together, today I'm going to show you how I'm sewing the quilt itself, all right? That's the block. And the last one showed, how to make the block. The last one, the original of this group project was how to make the block. And like I said, it's just a grandmother's flower garden. Now, how am I sewing these into the quilt is what is going to be today, okay? Now, when you're doing this, you can break up the areas between the flowers with what's called a garden path, and what those basically are is diamonds sewn into the points. Let me see if I can get that in there so you can see it. Diamonds sewn into the points of the hexagon, so it kind of evens this out, and you sew that together so you get what looks like a garden path as the diamonds. I don't do that for the very simple reason I'm never sure how big to make the diamonds. Plus, sewing the points is even more of a pain than sewing hexagons and the Y seams. Because the points, you're trying to get a 1/4 inch seam allowance on this little teeny tiny point. It's just not good. So I'm just sewing these together. And it's very easy because, let's see, you've got the quilt here and these just slot in. Your hexagons sew against they just slot in, they fit up against each other. Now what happens though is you get this ragged edge that looks like this, and you could just do a knife edge when you finish the quilt, but what I'm going to do is sew some more blue all the way around until it's out even, and then cut it straight. You could do that with half hexes too. I'm not going to do that because then cutting the half hexes is just the same as this is easier. Do a whole hexagon, sew it on there, sew enough of them around, take your ruler, cut them straight. And I'll be demonstrating that at a later point. But today we're just sewing the finished blocks into the quilt itself. And like I said, that's really simple. You just take your thread here, which I already smartly got my thread all together. All right, and I hold it there. I learned that from my 4-H teacher, Mrs. Miller, my 4-H leader, Mrs. Miller. She always put them there. She's like, it's a great conversation starter. And you just decide where you want this to go. We kind of need to go up here to make it not as wide off the side. You can stick them anywhere. And you just, now the difference with this is you're not going to start sewing at the lowest point. You're going to see here, it's easier if I put it up here. Let me do it this way so you can see what I'm doing. Okay? You're not going to sew it at the lowest point here. You see where they come together? You're going to go all the way over here. Make sure I got that right. Where they all fit together. And you'll see as you're holding them, they fit together right there. Flip it over so you got right sides together. And you're going to start sewing at that point. And you just sew until you get to the point where they don't match anymore. One continuous stream. And it's just like sewing your other hexagons together. Just like you're sewing your hexies, you do your Y seams and everything. You just make sure your knot is nice and good, and you just sew in and out, in and out. Whoops, my knot wasn't good, or I pulled too hard. Right, with your 1/4 inch seam allowance, you just. Could you do this on the sewing machine? Yes. Am I good enough to do that on the sewing machine? No. um, I can't sew something this small on the sewing machine with the Y seams and the flipping it around. So it's easier just to sew it. Said you just flip it around and you can see here where they're matching, and you just sew. You can pin if you want, so that you can see where they are, but there's a lot of twisting and turning. So this will sew all the way over to, let me see, and you can flip it a lot so you can see what you're doing. This would sew all the way over, this would match. You're going to sew it all the way over to there, okay? But you can keep double checking to see where you should sew and make sure you haven't sewn too far. But it's just one continuous stream. I'm going to not have you see what I'm doing until I get to a Y seam really quick. Pull my stitches tight. Keep pulling out my knot. Okay. This is a lot easier to do when I don't have to show what I'm doing. I just sit there and do it in front of the TV. That's the other thing. I like to have something on the something to hand sew while I'm watching TV. This is too big to take on a trip at this point, sewing it into the pieces. But the blocks themselves I could still travel with. But these, it's too big at this point. So I like to just do it while I'm watching TV. Just sew it away. I don't really watch TV. I'm more like listen to it. And you just keep sewing. I'm going to do this. Like I said, you're not going to see what I'm doing because this is just a straight line down the straight edge. I'm trying to get to the Y seam where they match up. And again, it's right sides together, and you can keep flipping back and forth, and you can pin it or mark it to show where they are. Now, whatever works best for you. Remember, there's no quilt police, and I swear one of these days I'm going to get the book of how to make letters, and I'm going to make a quilt that says no quilt police. And I'm going to hold it up every episode so that the people who want to tell me you don't do it the way I do can, so therefore you're doing it wrong, will maybe start listening. Look, I like to hear how other things are done. Improvement of technique, always appreciated. Telling me I'm wrong just because it's not the way you learned how to do it or the way you do it, not cool. Okay, so when you get to this point, whoops, there we go. You can see, the other reason I'm using white thread is kind of so you can see it. Now you see I'm at this point here. Now let's see if I can do this backwards. That'll be fun. Oops. And again, even hand sewing. Smaller piece on the front, larger piece on the back, so that it's not, you're not losing this smaller piece in there, and you can keep track of where you are easier, okay? Fold your seam lines, however, you see the seam line over there, seam line here, seam line here. I just like to opposite them. One goes this way, one goes that way, and just keep sewing. Okay, there you go. So, and it's going to get caught on everything because everything does when you're hand sewing. And I sew with really long threads, so they get caught on everything. But that way I don't have to restart. I don't have to restart all the time and put in knots, and you get a longer thread. You get a longer seam there that's unbroken, okay? and you just keep going, and now you're going up the V. The last one, see, the last one went down the V, now we're going up the V. Again, there's going to be a lot of pulling on the fabric and holding it when you're, which is the reason I don't machine sew these. It's just easier, and you just keep going. And when you get to the point up here, you do the same thing. You just pivot and keep sewing. And when you get to the divot, you just sew your seams and go up until it's done. Yeah, it's going to end right here is where I think they're all matched up. Yep, you're going to end there. Okay, and that's all you do. And that's how this is going to go together. And I'm just going to keep sewing them and making them until I get the quilt the size I want. It'll probably be lap size, maybe a little larger. Like I said, the end point is going to be sew a whole bunch of blue ones around to make an edging. And if I have to get just the right size, I can add a border after I straighten it out. Y'all will see the progress as we go. It's a little slow because I'm hand sewing them, but if y'all want to contribute, again, I'll have the link in the show notes to the first one that had all the fabric requirements and how to make these. And if you want to make them and send them to me, I will add them to the quilt, which I think it would be nice to have variety in here. Like I said, and then this is going to get donated to the local Ukrainian church that I know, and they can raffle it off. And of course, if y'all donate to this, I will of course keep y'all informed how many blocks I got from people. I won't be revealing anybody's names or anything, or definitely not addresses, and I'll let you know where it was donated and what they did with it, you know, how much was raised. Because I think if you participate in this project, you have the right to know what happens, okay? So that's it for this edition. Next time, we are going to put the border on the Bargello. Bargello. Actually, I think I looked it up. It's Bargello. It's actually pronounced Bargello with a hard G. We're going to put the border on that Bargello quilt. And so that'll be the next one in March. And then in April, we're going to be continuing again with Work in Progress Winter. But I'm going to be showing some new stuff, and I'll be looking at some stuff I'm trying to finish off and show you those techniques so that we can all finish projects. Obviously, if there's any techniques y'all want to learn about, let me know, and I'll see what I can do. In the meantime, you can support my work by going to my Ko-fi page, which is going to be a link again in the show notes, or you can visit my website. I'm going to be posting some new stuff on there, but there's still plenty of things on there. As always, like this video, comments. I'm always open to constructive, productive comments. So be nice. If you wouldn't say it to my face, don't say it in the comments. Share it. Recommend it to your friends. Followers are always gratefully appreciated. And that is it. Yeah, I'm just having fun sitting here sewing while I talk to y'all. Goodness, I need to do this more. Maybe we should have a live sometime where we all sit and sew and talk. I'm not really sure how that would work, but it's something that could be figured out, I'm sure. In the meantime, have fun. Quilting should be fun. Definitely should be relaxing. And there are no quilt police. See y'all next time.